Hello, everybody. Welcome to How Did They Do That Live? We are very excited for the May 9th Explorers Elementary Showcases. This is the MCS EdTech Explorers showcasing their lessons and reflections with the ISTE standards for students today. So we have a jam-packed session for y'all. So a couple items is we're doing this all week. We're doing it today, Monday, May 9th. But elementary, then middle school. Feel free to come back, join us for middle school on Tuesday, May 10th, tomorrow. And on Thursday, we'll have the showcases from high school joining us. So you can register in the PD catalog and join us on the upcoming days. We still have more showcases to share with you. I did want to share that the How They Did That Live, these showcases, they're ISTE themed. So it's the ISTE standards for students, and ISTE is an international society for technology with education, and they're the national and international standards for best ways to align technology in the classroom with students. And you're going to see today in the sharing from the lessons aligned to these ISTE standards that our own Modesto City School teachers have extended their lessons, enhanced them, and engaged the students with these ISTE standards. I also want to share that we've had a year of ISTE standards here at Modesto City Schools. So we had the MCS EdTech Explorers, which you're going to hear from very soon, 22 educators aligning their lessons to these ISTE standards. But we've been very purposeful. Each month, we've been theming to the ISTE standards. So you can see each of the months and different ISTE standards that we themed in our How They Did That Lives, and even the EdTech PD that you were taking in the PD catalog were themed to those same standards those months. And the Bits and Bytes newsletter that goes out to you each month was themed for each month. Coming soon for all educators, we're going to be curating and compiling all the great work that the MCS EdTech Explorers have done this year, and we're going to compile it into a tool that all educators can search for the lessons and reflection videos from our own Modesto City Schools teachers based on ISTE standard, grade level, and subject area. So that will be coming out soon that we'll be able to share with all educators in our district. Also, if you're interested, we are taking an interest survey for any educator that would like to be part of next year's MCS EdTech Explorers. So feel free to go to the website, bit.ly/join MCS Explorers. You can also use your phone right now and scan that QR code that will also bring up the online form. But we want to invite you if you're interested in MCS EdTech Explorers. It's going to be happening next year, and we're going to be rolling out at all 34 school sites. So we would love for you to sign up and join us. And I wanted to share with you today, you're going to be hearing from several presentations, and the elementary showcase will be showcasing the ISTE standards here that you see with a number. So we have 4 presentations today on the Innovative Designer Standard. We have 2 presentations today on the Creative Communicator, 1 presentation today on the Global Collaborator, and 1 presentation on Empowered Learner. We will get everything started with our first MCS EdTech Explorer from Kirshen Elementary CLT teacher Abigail Garcia Ashebrunner. Welcome.
Okay. Matthew, can I share my screen, please?
You should have presenting permission, so you should just be able to share your screen. Yeah.
Okay, so my name is Abigail Garcia Ashebrunner, and I teach computer literacy for Kirshen Elementary. The innovative design was the ISTE standard I chose to teach with the after-school program. The standard I chose was 1.4C. Students will develop, test, and refine prototypes as a part of the cyclical design process. So for our lesson, students had to build, they designed and redefined a prototype. In collaboration with the classroom teacher, we built a prototype. The teacher built a prototype for Christian Elementary. In the after-school program, we used Lego We Do 2.0, and students built a robot that would go through Mrs. Taylor's classroom build. Students learned through trial and error, found out that you couldn't build a prototype without wheels because it wouldn't move. And students had to go back and collaborate with their teams on making adjustments to their prototype. Another group realized that if you didn't have a motor in your prototype, it wouldn't work. So students learned also in coding that the robot, sometimes they needed to make adjustments in their code. This robot wouldn't travel the distance they wanted it to travel, or the robot didn't turn left or didn't turn right, and they had to go back and readjust their code. After teaching the lesson, I reflected and I learned that when you build a prototype as a teacher, you sometimes have to take a step back and allow your students to discover that a prototype might not work. I knew the first prototype of the snail wasn't going to work, but I had to allow the students to self-discover to solve the problem and build a better prototype. In coding of the robot, I learned that students sometimes will code a block of one block or two and expect their robot to move 200 feet. And you sometimes have to test your code and go back and readjust it. Sometimes our robots didn't travel as far as we wanted. Sometimes he wasn't returning on the prototype, so we had to readjust our code. And I had to sometimes stand back and not give the students the answers, but have them go through the process of working as a team. What could we do better? The MCS Text Explorers program gave me a deeper understanding of the ITSE standards. And so now I understand what the 7 ITSE standards are. Participating in the Explorers program has changed the way I teach computer literacy. I start with the standard I need to teach, and I think about how can I fully implement the standard? What approved MCS apps can I use to incorporate into teaching the standard? And what apps can I put together to fully integrate the standard? So I learned that in working in collaboration with Ms. Taylor, not only did students learn to collaborate with each other, they also learned to talk out what the problem was, how to solve the solution, and how to work in collaborative groups together to make adjustments to both their prototype and the coding of their robots. In the following slides, I have pictures of the students that you can look through of the prototype that was built in Ms. Taylor's classroom. And they built it with 34 students in her classroom. She built a prototype of Christian Elementary. And she even added little cars, and she added the playground so we can see what Christian Elementary looks like. And I took several pictures so you guys could see what the elementary actually looks like. And if we go further, then we'll see the first prototype the kids built. They built the snail, and unfortunately, the snail didn't work because the snail had no wheels. But the students learned that sometimes happens. Here you can see students, we were on the floor, students were collaborating with each other, trying to build a robot, giving all the tools we had. We had a Lego kit, and it comes in pieces. So basically you have the wheels, you have the motor, you have all the bits and pieces that you got to build it together in order to make it work. This group decided that it was best to first sort out all the Legos and then start building instead of just taking pieces out of the box. They learned that they had to talk to each other and they have to work together. One student had to read the directions, another student had to figure out, find the pieces in the box, and they also had to find the motor because the Lego We Do kits did not come with the motor automatically attached to the robot. So they had to learn how to put the motor with what they built together and connect. This was their second prototype, and this prototype actually had wheels on it. So this is the prototype we actually did test. This is the prototype that was built by, this is another view of the prototype. As you can see, it's got 4 wheels. So this prototype, we were able to test it against the model and run it against the model. This was group 2. Group 2 used a different kit. They used a VTEX kit. And what this group found out is it had no directions, no instructions, and it had all the pieces in it, but it had no organization. So they had to work together as a team to figure out, okay, where's your motor? Where's your USB cords that you need? How are we going to build it? What do they want to build? So they also collaborated together, and eventually this team came up with a robot that had 2 wheels, and it also had a motor. This is the group that found out that if you don't have a motor, you can't run your robot. But we had some problems with coding. In the coding, this group found out that the VTech didn't automatically give us directions like the Lego We Do kits to program our robot. So we had some problems with, first problem was the motor. They found out we needed to add a motor. Second problem was in the coding of this robot. The VTech wasn't as easy to code as the We Do, so we had to go back to the drawing board on this. This is what they eventually did built, but it had some issues in the coding of the second robot. But that is something we learned as we went along in this process of building and redefining the process. And they decided they would put a kindergartner on it because that was our essential question, is how do we get a kindergartner from their classroom to the computer lab? So the kindergartner is a little icon there that they put on top of their robot. This is coding from Lego We Do, and so the kids, because the kids were used to block coding, this became very simple to them. But our problem with the coding was we had to readjust our code as we went along, because we would code a couple of things and then we would test it, and then we would sit back and say, okay, did the robot do exactly what we wanted to do? So we had a lot of trial and error in coding. And here are more of the students collaborating together, working together as teams. And as you can see, we kind of, sometimes the adults in the classroom, we stood back and let the kids collaborate, because one of the things I learned was you can't just give the students the answer. You sometimes have to sit back and watch and see what that collaboration process, and make sure that the kids are collaborating and that I'm not just giving them the answers, even when I know that the code is wrong or the snail isn't going to go through the prototype that was built by Miss Taylor's classroom. In conclusion, I think innovative design was one of the things that I enjoyed the most of the standards that I taught. And teaching innovative design, I learned that sometimes you got to build the prototype, you got to test the prototype. Students are going to have questions, and sometimes you got to take a step back and not give students the answers, but allow that collaboration among themselves so they can problem solve each other and resolve what the problem is within their team. Sometimes you'll give them 1 or 2 lines of code, but for the most part, you have to, as a teacher, you got to take a step back and let the process work itself out so students can really collaborate amongst each other, resolve the problem, and not the teacher's going to give me the answer, but we're going to solve the problem as a team together. And that is all I have for you guys today. Thank you.
Thank you, Abigail. That was fantastic. And I think a lot of these lessons kind of wind up incorporating more ISTE standards, because you kind of saw the students go a little bit through the design process and computational thinking process too as they went through that. I'll go ahead and load up my screen share here. And our next presenter after Abigail is going to be Joe. So Joe, did you want to share your screen or your webcam today?
I can share my screen.
Fantastic. Feel free to share whenever you're ready.
All right, thank you. All right, 1 second. All right, so I selected global collaborators because what happened was one of my colleagues, she had this idea of integrating information about bees and having the kids create a project with it where they were going to create what was called a one-pager. It's an AVID strategy, and the kids basically define what they're learning through this one-pager, and it's a form of presentation. And so from that, I had the idea of, when I learned about what global collaborators are through ITSE, I had an idea to just really take this idea to the next level and integrate the technology that we've been learning throughout the year. And so we created what was called we called it the B project. And I worked in collaboration with my colleague next door to me, because we teach similar grade levels, and so what we basically were doing was having the kids, after they studied and learned about bees, create a presentation where they could share this with lower grade levels about what is wrong with bees and how to protect the bees in our community and how important they are. But what happened was, because of the global collaborator element of it, I had reached out to several bee colony organizations and universities, and I actually got a hold of a bee study group at Arizona State University, and so they contacted me, and we were actually able to have interactions with an actual bee biologist. And the students, before they met with the biologist, sent their questions, because I just wanted to kind of give the biologists an opportunity to see where the kids were thinking about and what they were thinking about with regards to bees after they've already done their initial research and studies and things like that. And we already had pre-assigned groups that the students were working in. And so I had built an outline for the students, several guiding questions, and they were aware of what their final project was going to be. So when we met with the biologist using Zoom from the university, she actually was in her laboratory with all the bees and was able to talk about all the elements about bees we had been studying, but actually took it a step farther because she is an expert on bees. And the kids were just fascinated because they could actually interact with someone who was not in their school or in their classroom. And now they are what they are. And the bee biologist also gave them ideas how to refine their project. So that way, we had mentioned that since they're fourth graders, they're going to share this with kinder, first, second, and third graders. And she had suggested to really simplify it, how to simplify it, and that if it was her presentation, she suggested that the kids really teach the younger kids how to protect bees, why it's important to protect bees, and know that the bees will not hurt you. And so this is the message the students are now taking to their to the other classrooms. And in order to take it to the other classroom, they also had to go the next level and send an email to those teachers requesting the opportunity to share their information for about a 2-minute presentation in those classrooms. What was exciting about this project is it really is the culmination of the way I saw it and the way I put it together with them being global collaborators, is it really brought together everything we've been learning throughout the year, how to interact with others via the internet or through a meeting such as this, how to select the best application for their project, and to make agreements about what is best for them and the team. This would not have happened at the beginning of the year. And because of all the work we've been doing through the EdTech Explorers, once they got to this point, it was very exciting to watch, because the students, when they had issues that they were having trouble figuring out, they had the resources available and they knew where to go to solve the problems. They also were able to interact with their peers at a higher level to prepare their projects before they could even show it to me. And so all those things combined probably yielded a much richer and more exciting activity and learning process for the students. And on a side note, prior to the pandemic, in the elementary schools, we were very much limited on what we could and could not do as far as utilizing technology consistently. But now that every child has a laptop, they're able to dig deeper and create things that are much more richer and more realistic to what they will encounter in the future. And I don't think that would have happened as quickly if we hadn't gotten those computers in the kids' hands now. And because of that, this allowed for me to really build a progression of learning that I didn't throughout the school year to get to this point that I don't think I would have really solidified till much later on in this process if it wasn't for this course, this EdTech Explorer course. So overall, it's exciting to see the kids feeling empowered with their learning and empowered with their approach to using the educational technology. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. That was fantastic. I'm going to go ahead and reshare my screen here. Up next, we have Julie Smith, and Julie wasn't able to join us live today, so I will be showing you a recording from Julie. So we'll load that up here. And I believe I shared sound, but if anyone has trouble hearing me, feel free to just interrupt real quick and let me know you can't hear the video. All right, we'll go ahead and take a look at Julie's recording here.
Hi everyone, my name is Julie Smith and I am a 5th grade teacher at Everett Elementary. And my job today is to share with you ISTE Standard 1.1 Empowered Learner. My goal is going to be to inspire you to do something simple that will empower your students. In other words, to make them feel like they have some control in their education via the use of technology. Alrighty, here we go. Oh, and yes, it is May the 4th. Sorry, you guys, it's May the 9th for you, but May the 4th today, so apologies for the Star Wars gear. Here we go. Okay, so I'm going to share with you 2 super simple ways to incorporate choice into your daily routine as an elementary teacher. You may be doing these already, and if so, then you are empowering your students already. You are following ISTE Standard 1.1 Empowered Learner. But if not, there are 2 simple ways to encourage you to do so. Number 1 is using your Schoology page to post digital choice boards. Whether or not it is writing tasks and you want to give your kids lots of options for what they're going to write about or how to present that writing, you can post it as a digital choice board, or perhaps it is a made-you activity. Actually, I'm on my home room right now. It's basically one big digital choice board. You can come down and kids might end up going into the May folder. There's tons of activities there. Our genre of the month is poetry, so they may be in there, whatever the case might be. Giving them choice, easy access, just takes a little work putting it in, but then it's all there for the kids. If I were to go into one of our core classes, for example, math, we're going to have choice boards there as well. Well, choice boards including videos. Actually, behind that button, there are a ton of videos that the kids will be taken to, and they can choose what they need to practice, what they feel they need a little extra help with. Websites that give instant feedback, always the most helpful, especially under the banner of Empowered Learner, which really wants kids to have they want kids to have instant feedback. We want kids to have instant feedback because we know when they get instant feedback, then they can take more control of their learning. They know what they know and what they don't know. Otherwise, they just keep going on thinking that they got it all. I have some choice boards here for multiplication. This was a big need for my kiddos in my class, and of course extra choice boards, so if they want to go on and do other activities that are math related, that they have that option to do so. Another thing though, besides choice boards, and actually go on and on all day, I actually did put, by the way, some coding choice boards, and I think I'll put a few others into a doc that I'm going to be pushing out for you in case you're interested in a few. But in addition to choice boards, you can also consider doing something that you're already doing, but just adding a little more choice to it. So something super simple that most, especially upper elementary teachers, I know we tend to assign either as homework or as classwork when kids finish early. We encourage them to read a book and sometimes assign very specific minutes and so on. But rather than doing that, it might be good to let the kids decide what their goals are, what they feel that they need, and to do it in a way that allows them to put out the information in a more user-friendly digital manner. So for example, this is just, again, one example of a digital reading log where the kids can mark their goal of what they're going to do. They can add lots of imagery, as well as doing their normal log, again, that is dependent on what they're doing and what they're reading. I do like to encourage my kids to read a different genre every month, because that's one thing where, yes, we want choice in most of the books we read every month, but at least one book that follows the genre of the month, just to encourage a little bit of variety and to get them to dip their toes into books they might not have otherwise read. So my kids will go along with this calendar of genres of the month, and when they complete their focus book for that genre, then they get to complete a choice activity of how they present their book talk or their response to that book. So for example, these are the 3 I choose, but the list would be limitless, whatever you choose to use. But because the goal is to have them reading and to have them enjoying that reading, it's not really about the output. So the kids can choose whatever output they want. And I give them the option of slide decks, flip grids, or a live book talk in class. So if you're interested, some ideas that they could do is they could create a slide deck. Again, here's an informational one and a fictional one. Pretty simple. They just have to read whatever their text is and complete the parts. It helps them to think about the parts of a fictional chapter book, for example, or the pieces of the informational, all the way down to, what text features helped you understand the information in this book, things of that sort. They could complete this slide deck. Or they could complete, and this is the most popular thing for kids in the past to do, is to complete their book talk on a flip grid, because they can record, like what I'm doing right now. They can record, and if they aren't comfortable with what went out, they have the choice to re-record, and they have the opportunity to do it again and again. So the kids like to do the book talk, which all they have to do is state the book author, some details about the book, and answer whether or not they would recommend it. 5 stars, absolutely, I'd recommend this for everyone. It was an amazing book because blah, blah, blah. So just some ideas. Or of course, in our classroom, non-digital, the kids can actually come up to the front of the room and just share out live what they thought of that book, and again, details about that book, so that other kids can maybe be inspired to read the same text. So just some ideas in terms of choice, using things you probably already use anyways. Again, book talks and reading logs, or just choice boards on topics that the kids need practice with. So putting some of those things out there, great way to empower your students, to help them to become empowered learners, and I guess to help us become empowered teachers. All right, guys, thank you for listening. Sorry I went over my time. Bye-bye.
All right, so that was Julie. Thank you, Julie. And it looks like Julie is attending today, and she must be in the audience here because she did post in the Q&A area a link to her resources, and I was able to publish those. So if you go up to the little Q&A area in the top corner, you can click on that and you can take a look at Julie's resources.
Hi, everyone.
Oops, don't want to start that again. And it looks like Karina, unfortunately, was not able to join us today. So, but actually it might be a little bit fortuitous because I think we're going to run a little close on time here. So we will go ahead and continue to our next presenter, Christy Wilson. I know Christy is here with us today. Christy, feel free to come off mute, share your camera or your screen whenever you are ready.
Okay, hi everyone. I'm over here at Sonoma. I have a presentation to share with everyone. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay. Is everyone able to see my presentation?
Yes, we can see it.
Wonderful. Okay, so I chose the creative communicator for my presentation for my ISTE, and that covers 2 standards for using ISTE standards for students. I had 1.6B which is students create original works or responsibly repurpose or remix digital resources into new creations. And I also got to use students publish or present content that customizes the message and medium for their intended audiences. And as educators, we always love when we can use two things for one. It's always the best. So I'm going to go ahead and show off what we did. We created a really cool biography unit, and in 5th grade, we study American history. So again, using cross-curricular standards, right? As many as we can get. So we did a biography study on one famous American, and this is kind of a glimpse into my unit folder here on Schoology. So they had to look through a list of American heroes that I provided that had links to resources, and mainly Britannica. I love Britannica, everyone. If you're not using it, it's very user-friendly for elementary students. And there's even reading levels, which is great because I have 5th grade GATE. So they're able to access middle school, which they can read through, and some of them high school level, they're ready for it. So that's another way to differentiate. Anyway, they chose their American hero. I approved it in this discussion. Then they took notes. So the approved articles, they had to go through and sift through all of their information they need, and I provided kind of a skeleton for them. This is what you're going to need, so look for these items. They also created a poem about a famous American. Finally, they made an outline and an essay. That was just online. So they did a few more things physically. So this is all digital. So I'm going to go next. Here is an example of their biography notes I chose. I like how organized the student was, so I had to show this one off. And then here's the poem that he created, which I think is great. If you don't know, we had this for open house, which was in April, and April is poetry month, so it was nice to kind of show off, hey, we did poetry this year. Here you go. And here is their outline that he created. Again, showing kind of what I'm looking for when they're writing. And here's his essay. I realize I could have shrunk this down a little bit for everyone to see. And here was a picture of the folder they created. They created a manila folder with all of their stuff. So here is his poem, and they made a timeline. I always love timelines in informative text. It really shows the text feature. And they created a portrait. And what I liked about their portrait is I taught them how to create a portrait using math, some measurements of the nose to lips and how the eyes need to be spaced out. And that was cool. Always love to teach a little math in our units. So my reflection for the standards, we had a lot of fun with this unit, but I also felt as if the students really got to understand what it meant to research something that they were passionate about, because they got to choose their person to research, but then they didn't always find what they needed. So I said you need 4 interesting facts and events through their life. Well, is this interesting enough in their opinion? So, well, normally we would use Google, scholarly articles in Google. So I kind of got to show them how to do that. And then we also talked about reading these articles and how to phrase them in our own words and not just copying and pasting. So that really hit one. And this lesson was really great for them. They got to use so many different medias and mediums to create this unit on someone they studied. And they were all very proud, right? We always try to help our students be proud. Yeah. Oh, here we go. So students are responsible for their own notes, and they research with the teacher provided websites, right? So like I just said, and then for 1.6D, they spent this time researching, creating poems, timelines, right? And that's how they created everything using the standard. Had to include this quote. Intelligence is the ability to adapt to change, right? And I love that because I feel as if the switch to all of this technology has really helped teachers see that we are able to use technology every day, and we can even incorporate physical books with this. So in our class school library, we have the famous American biographies and autobiographies that students could pull, and just having a few online articles that's really hitting ISTE standards. So some of us are already hitting these ISTE standards, and I think that's so great, and it's such a productive way to include this technology into our classroom. And some of us don't really know, right? So why tech is important to me, segueing to that, I felt like a leader at my site. I felt like I had teachers who will ask me questions about technology or anything like digital citizenship, anything like that, or how can I quote this or cite this with my students. It made me feel responsible, that I had to be accountable for these lessons that I created, and I wanted teachers to see that it is accessible for all of us to have ed tech and to be technology forward. I felt diligent, punctual, right, with all of these meetings we had all year long, definitely, and driven and motivated. I really enjoyed this, and I think it's inspired a new passion in me to introduce more technology. And like I heard another presenter say earlier, I thought that was so special, was what other apps can we use to include in our learning? And it just really helps with the hands-on and to be able to see and manipulate, and it's helping teach them to use technology. And I just think that's very wonderful. And I just want to say thank you to our team, Matthew and Alexandra. I really appreciate everything you've done for me. So thank you. That's my presentation.
Thank you, Christy. It was a very fantastic presentation. I really liked that quote that you shared there near the end about intelligence being the ability to adapt to change. Might be a little bit of a selfish reason for liking it, because I feel like we all have had to adapt to a lot of change lately. And so just reaffirming that, that does take some skill, that does take some brains, and, just that was a very good quote. And I appreciated you sharing that with the group, as well as your reasons for loving ed tech and all of that. So thank you.
Yeah, and I feel like we've all made this change. We really have. We've all had to adapt, and we've all kind of moved forward, and now let's be positive about it, right? Let's be positive and adaptable. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Christy. Yep, I absolutely agree. I think we talk about this a lot in our team. There's definitely some silver linings that came out of this pandemic. It was horrible. It was tragic for a lot of reasons, but we definitely moved forward with technology. And now let's continue to work with this change and keep some of the lessons that we learned. All right, getting off my soapbox, I could talk forever. I want to go ahead and make room for our next presenter, Melanie Gillum. So Melanie, whenever you are ready, it is your turn.
Okie dokie. Let me see if I can share my screen. And maybe you'll work and maybe you won't. Why are we not sharing? Ah, there we go. Can you see my screen?
Yes, I can see it.
Awesome. Oh, darn. Hold on. I have to start over. It went backwards. Technical difficulties. Something I've become very familiar with. So I'm sharing my innovative designer lesson, and it is a 5th grade lesson, but I think you could adapt it for, almost any grade level up to about 8th grade. So the ISTE standards that I selected for this lesson were 1.4a, 1.4c, and 1.4d. This was a lesson that I got a big bang for my buck, so to speak. My students would use a variety of technologies within the design process to identify solved problems by creating new, useful, or imaginative solutions. So this was a challenge for my students to create roller coasters and get to understand momentum and kinetic energy versus potential energy, and what does conservation of energy mean. So the students, 1.4a says students know and use deliberate design process. Well, the deliberate design process that we used was the engineering design process. So the students had to understand, first of all, what that meant to generate ideas. Then they tested their theories after doing some hands-on learning on gizmos. And then creating innovative artifacts or solving authentic problems. I started out the students, we had been discussing mass and energy and momentum and potential and kinetic energy the week prior to doing this lesson. And so then I created a Nearpod for them to review their vocabulary words that we had learned prior to. And then what we did was we watched a video about roller coasters, and throughout the video we would stop and we would say, what do we notice? What do we wonder? Why did a roller coaster maybe go faster, or why did it seem like the people on the roller coaster were moving side to side more, things like that. So we took notes and we had a lot of discussion about how the roller coaster is affecting them personally if they were in it, in the roller coaster, experiencing those G's, and why, if they don't have motors, do the roller coasters continue. So it was a really, really good opportunity reviewing that Discovery Education video to understand kind of the mechanics of a roller coaster. And then we went and did a gizmos where the students were able to try different things on the gizmo. So, and then of course, the prototypes were what we would use when they eventually created their own roller coaster using tape and using straws and foam piping. And then they would test their prototypes using different weighted balls. So they had a golf ball, they had marbles, they had wiffle balls to test their hypotheses. And then 1.4D has to do with students exhibiting a tolerance for ambiguity, perseverance, and the capacity to work with open-ended problems. This was probably the most challenging part of the standard for my students. And I'll get to that in a minute. So the essential question, of course, were what are the forces at work in roller coasters? And then, of course, we were introduced to simulations of roller coasters and discussions about potential kinetic and conservation of energy. The students did simulate different types of roller coasters. They did single and double loops initially in a gizmo, and then they shared their findings with their partner. So they worked individually. It was just my teaching when we were having our discussion about vocabulary, and then we worked whole group, watching the video, sharing what we noticed. And then gizmos, they did partner work. So each pair had one computer, and they worked on their gizmos to see, what was the most effective, looking at like the height of their coasters, the weight of the car, the number of loops. And then the last part was the students worked in collaborative groups to build their own roller coasters. And first with a single loop, and then with a double loop. And it was chaos. I'll just tell you, it was chaotic. But it was by far one of my favorite lessons of the year. So I thought I'd share with you just a little bit of one of their artifacts, so that they had to flip grid themselves, showing their roller coaster, and whether it worked or not, they still needed to show it. So if I can get this to go, I'll show you what that looked like. It was so exciting. So I was pretty proud of them. It was exciting, and it was watching them. That probably took them about an hour and 20 minutes to argue over, just have these great collaborative, reaching consensus discussions. There were some heated arguments because things weren't working and they were getting very frustrated, but in the end, they were all able to do it. So, oh gosh, sorry about that. Pressed the wrong button. So what I learned during this lesson was it's imperative that I give my students about 3 times as much time as I thought that they would need to collaborate, particularly because this was a lesson in the beginning of the year. And collaboration for them was still, they were 5th graders, but really 3rd graders, and just learning to trust each other. I would definitely, in lessons after this, realize that I had done so much overthinking, and I was trying to add way too many things. So my lesson really was a lot longer than I had hoped. So instead of a couple of hours, it probably was at least 2 half days. And I think that because this is one of the, truly collaborative grouping lessons that I'd done, where everybody had a role, it would have been less chaotic if I had actually just spent way more time with them clarifying their roles. I chose the groups, and I think in this lesson it would have been better if the students had grouped themselves, because again, that whole trust issue in the beginning of the year, and also the providing wait time and listen, a lot of, I can't do this, I don't know how to do this, and not losing patience with them or myself. I think that was key. And like I said, I tried to do too many things and too many applications. So I definitely think less is more. So it was a great lesson, but it could not have been done, like I said, in 2 hours. It just couldn't have. So participating in this program has been challenging, frustrating, eye-opening, and so many other descriptive words, but I could go on. However, for me, the word that keeps popping into my head is empowered. So technology means so much more than just being like, hey, I can keyboard and I can use basic tools, but it's really allowed me to challenge myself and my teaching practice. And I really appreciate that opportunity that being part of this program has given me. And it has given my students more opportunities to be engaged. And I'm really excited that I'm able to bring that to them. So that's it for me.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing, Melanie. I'm going to go ahead and reshare my screen again. And I think that is it for our live presenters. I did get a message from Karina kind of while Melanie was presenting that she's having some internet issues. So I think that is it for our live presenters today. Although if Karina is able to join us here, we'll try and fit her in. But we are kind of coming into the last 10 minutes. So we'll go ahead and continue on here. So the next person that we're going to hear from is Linda Farnon, and she's from Burbank, and she'll be presenting on the Creative Communicator. And it is a recording again. So I did share my audio. Definitely let me know if you cannot hear the video. And we'll take a look at what Linda has to say.
Hello, my name is Linda Farnan, and I am a computer literacy teacher at Burbank Elementary School. I chose the Creative Communicator standard for my showcase lesson. This standard focuses on having students communicate clearly and express themselves creatively for a variety of purposes using the platforms, tools, styles, formats, and digital media appropriate to their goals. My lesson idea was diagramming life cycles with Ozobots. This is the first year that I have used Ozobots in my computer lab. Ozobots are tiny robots that kind of look like R2-D2 but can fit in the palm of your hand. Ozobots primarily detect dark spaces on paper. Ozobots are motorized, so they can follow lines and color combinations on paper too. In this lesson, students will create interactive diagrams to show the life cycles of 2 different organisms, and students will program their Ozobots to demonstrate the stages of the organism's life cycle. Before jumping into this STEAM lesson, I asked students how much they knew about life cycles. And a quick survey of my 3rd grade students, I found out that only about 1/3 were familiar with this term. So I decided to give them 2 quick videos on the life cycle of a frog and the life cycle of a butterfly. Diagram 1, the life cycle of a frog. I chose to start off with a class collaboration to make sure that everyone understood the process of drawing and labeling a diagram. To begin, on stage 1, they drew and labeled an egg. Then they drew and labeled pictures to identify stages 2 through 4. And I just had this picture really quick. This is a student who has some special needs and they didn't want to do any writing. So when I said you need to, write the word frog, he said, I don't want to write, but can I just draw the character? And I said, yes, you can. All right, diagram 2. For diagram 2, students could choose another organism. Programming the bot. Next, we use markers and a color code chart to choose special moves to demonstrate each stage of the life cycle. For those not very familiar with Ozobots, drawing color codes is how students give an input or command for the Ozobot to perform. The students have already learned several special moves called cool moves or special moves. One example of a cool or special move is their tornado. Students input the sequence red, green on paper to command the Ozobot to perform the tornado. Students thought about the stage of the life cycle and then matched a cool move that would best represent that stage. Students use their knowledge of previous lessons. For example, some students use the zigzag code to demonstrate a butterfly flying free from the chrysalis. Finally, after completing both diagrams, it was time for the Ozobots to demonstrate the life cycles. The students put their bot on the start of the first diagram and watched it as it completed the life cycle. Then they put their bot at the start of the second diagram and watched it as it completed the life cycle sequence for the second organism. This was a super fun lesson to teach and watch the students complete. It was one of the best lessons that have incorporated the idea of STEAM, science, technology, and art. I believe that any educator teaching the life cycles with their students would have success in this interactive lesson. In conclusion, I want to share that this EdTech program has meant to me. I have enjoyed digging deeper into the ITSE standards. In the past, I've been anxious and kind of hesitant to teach all of the standards because I thought it would be too difficult to implement properly. However, by jumping in and giving each standard a try, I realized that you can focus on just 1 or 2 substandards of an ITSE standard to get comfortable with. I also benefited from the book club selections. I found it inspiring to see how many different ways technology can be used to teach and enrich student learning. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Linda, for that fantastic video. We do have about 5 minutes left in the official webinar time. We have one more presenter to hear from. So I do want to take a quick pause and just talk about attendance real quick. Because this is a live event, attendance works a little bit different than our usual webinars where Teams tracks it for us. I do need you guys to take a moment to fill out an attendance form. I'm going to post the link in an announcement here. And you can go ahead and click on that form and fill it out while we watch the last presenter. And then we'll just do a little bit of a wrap up here and get you on your way. We might go just a couple minutes over, but please try and stay if you can, because our final presenter also has some great content for us. So if you go up to the Q&A section and click on that, there should be an announcement from me with a link to a Google form. It's forms.gl. You can click on that, fill that out for the attendance for today.
Hello, my name is Linda.
And we'll hear from our final presenter for today, Lisa Boyd. Again, she also has a recording, so we'll go ahead and take a look at that recording here in just a second. She's over at Everett and Franklin, and she's also presenting on the Innovative Designer, which actually happens to be one of my favorite standards too, so I think that's why we're seeing a lot of those today. All right, let's hear from Lisa.
Welcome, my name's Lisa Boyd, and this is my ISTE Showcase. As I said, my name's Lisa Boyd. I am a computer literacy teacher, and I teach K-6. The subject area that I am going to be sharing with you today is Innovative Designer. And an innovative designer is someone who uses a variety, you can use a variety of different technologies and basically take these different technologies and create new, useful, or imaginative solutions to problems that you've identified. Okay, and our students can actually do this through the design process, and they can select appropriate tools. They can plan, manage, design, develop the prototypes, and persevere to open-ended problems so they can start thinking for themselves and figuring out how to solve problems without us telling them how to do it. The area that we're going to focus on today is 1.4C, which is students develop, test, and refine prototypes as part of this design process. So these are the stages that the students go through. They go through the empathize, define, ideate, prototype, and test. So the empathize is that part where they realize there is a problem and they try to figure out, how does it affect everyone around them. And then the defining is once you have that problem, then really what is it? So you sense it, now you know it. And what are all the components to it? And that's what the define part is. Ideate, of course, is that the cause and effect. So you're brainstorming, getting these ideas and trying to figure out, well, what would happen if I did this? And what would happen if I did that? This is really one of those areas that our students really need a lot of practice in. And so that brainstorming and thinking about cause and effect is important here. And that figuring out the cause and effect will actually lead them to a prototype, which is the process that they would use in order to fix the problem. And then they can go ahead and start testing it. So the area that our instance came up when I was teaching about input and output with my students, and there was this cute little game here.
Let's see if you can tell which ones are the input devices and output devices. Click and drag each device to the appropriate box. Like on a keyboard.
Okay, so what this was is that you would click this and then you would put it next to the box and then it would respond.
Great work.
And if you got it wrong, then it would say, oh, no, you got that one wrong.
How about a webcam?
So I actually took this and I thought, hey, you know what? This would be really good if the kids could design something just like it. And since they could actually go into the Scratch program and see how it was done, basically I looked at them and I said, I want you guys to design your own. Use the one as a model, but I want you to design your own. I want different sprites. I want a different background. I want a different topic. You know, I just see what you can do. And this is something that the kids came up with. So this student here changed the sprite, changed the background, and decided he was going to do kind of a game here between animals and mammals. Of course, we didn't have microphones, so he actually had to use talking bubbles to do the explanation there. And then it would work. And just like that. So that's what we actually did to actually show this part of that standard. Let's see, what has this program done for me? Well, it has shown me how I can empower my students. And that's one of the things that I really liked about it, is that I saw how much I could actually lay in my students' lap to take on and to help them make those choices for themselves. And they enjoyed it. They really loved that freedom to make those decisions for themselves, to problem shoot it, to actually work on it. So I love it. But all of these pieces come together, and when all of these pieces in the ISTE standards come together, the digital citizen, the knowledge construct, the innovative design, when all of them come together, you've really given that student tools that they can use. And I think that that's one of the things that I loved about using this. And yeah, I want to keep using this because I really do want to empower my students.
All right, and that was Lisa Boyd, our final presenter for today. So that was a fantastic video, and we're just a couple minutes over. Just a quick reminder, in the announcements area is a link to the attendance, so please take a moment to fill that out.
Welcome.
And we'll go ahead and continue. And then just a reminder as well, if you are interested in being an Explorer next year, if hearing all this kind of sparked your interest and you want to kind of challenge yourself a little bit next year, as you saw here for the presenters all today, it requires some work, but it sounds like they all got something fantastic out of it. Their students really got to explore some really neat lessons. So definitely, if you're interested, check out the bit.ly link here on screen or check out the QR code. And I will be sending out an email with all of the resources from today sometime tomorrow. So if you missed it today, don't worry, I will be getting it out to you tomorrow. And just another quick reminder, please fill out that attendance form in the Q&A section. And that is it for our showcase. Matthew, did you have any final words that you wanted to share before we end the webinar for today?
Well, thank you all MCS EdTech Explorers for presenting today. Fantastic job, and it's been great to see the showcase pieces. And Alexandra, thank you for being the hostess with the mostest. Always doing a great job, and thank you all for attending. And like Alexandra said, fill out the attendance form. And if you're interested, the interest survey for MCS EdTech Explorers to join us next year. So we'll be going to infinity and beyond. Thank you.
All right, with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and formally end the webinar now. If you have any questions, though, you are always welcome to reach out to me via email or anyone on my team, and we are happy to help you with anything that you might need. Thank you, and I hope you have a great afternoon.